It was a lot, honestly, and a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, I feel like delineates into the same conversation.
Hmm.
But I'll say this: um, in 2028, if I have to sign to Nike to increase my likelihood to play USA basketball, I'll pass.
Why?
One, I think the essence, like you see it in our grassroots, um, kids instead of enjoying the essence of basketball are like forced to pick a side.
Hmm.
And I look at our global game, and Europe is closing the gap.
Hmm.
And he's right in bringing that up. Nike, along with Adidas and all the other sponsorship companies, have way too much influence, and it's forcing the best high schoolers to not being able to play other kids on the same level because they're part of a different brand. And that is having an effect on the players because in Europe, these guys not only have the advantage of becoming professionals as their preteens, but their training is a lot different and they get a better overall scope of the game. They got to train on ball handling regardless of size. They got to train on post-up skills. They spend most of their time training and they advance only according to their skill, not their age. That's why we see Luka being as good as he was out there in Spain at a very young age. I believe he was 19. And by the time he got into the NBA, you see it translated in his very first playoff series against Kawhi and Paul George. A healthy Kawhi and Paul George, I should say. And Luka was giving those boys a tough time. So there is a lot of politics with the sponsorship deals. And if you really look at it, if there's a lot of politics with amateur kids, you could only imagine the politics when it comes to Team USA and millions, if not billions of dollars at stake, with Nike making about 58% of their revenue outside of North America when the Olympics are on, and Adidas making 76% and Under Armour making 39%. And this is where the athletes kind of got to cash in on some of those sponsorship deals with just making these Olympic appearances. They get a percentage of the royalty checks of the shoes that they sell or just merchandise. We see all kinds of sneaker releases during the Olympics, LeBron Gold Edition or etc. But the Olympics overall is the Super Bowl for all these sponsors: Adidas, Under Armour, Nike, hell, even Skechers. They're all cashing in, and this is how the sponsors justify the large contracts that the higher tier athletes get, like Kevin Durant, LeBron, all that money that they're giving away to these guys in sponsorship deals. This is where they help them cash in on that. Is the global reach. It's not necessarily the sales in the US, it's just global. And the Olympics overall is in cahoots with this because they do restrict certain competitors of Nike and other brands. It's called the Olympic 40 rule, from actually having too many ad slots during the Olympics. So a lot of things are reserved for Nike to be the main sponsor and kind of utilize on the Super Bowl of marketing for these athletic wear companies, which the Olympics definitely is. That's the main politics of those players being on Team USA. About 80 to 90% of the roster is already predetermined.
I believe that we should focus more on our development of our youth and grassroots. And I think I think shoe companies should have less control over the industry right now. And I was one of those kids. You know, I was a top player, number one. Actually, you came to one of my high school games. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I was a top player in high school, and and it was so much to deal with. Nike, Adidas, like going to an Adidas school, going to a Nike school. Um,
And also the new NIL situation with these kids in the amateur circuit able to cash in. It also allows these athletic companies to lock in deals with these kids earlier on and get them at a cheaper rate. Because for these kids, that would be their first 6-figure to 9-figure check. It wouldn't necessarily be coming from the leagues. It'll be coming from these shoe companies first. So today, most of the NBA players you see getting drafted, A good amount of them already was cashing in 6-figure checks before they even got to that stage. These are very interesting times now, because just a few years ago, this was not even the case.
And the kids should just be focusing on development. And I think this has a direct correlation to what we see at the highest level, even in, in Olympic play. Like, politics is not synonymous with basketball. As my role as the vice president, I sit in these conversations with now who is Andre, who's our executive director.
Andre Iguodala.
And Adam Silver,
Okay.
who is the commissioner for the NBA, who goes back and forth about what we need and what's best for our game. So I know what corporate sponsors, what their what their pedigree is like. I know what the relationship is like. I know how those conversations go on. Anybody who thinks sports, politics are not cohesive,
They operate in sync with one another. Absolutely.
you lying to yourself. So I'll say it again, because I know it'll be a quote in 2028. If I have to sign to Nike to increase my likelihood of playing USA basketball, I'll pass.
Why do you mention Nike?
Because they're the lead sponsor for the USA basketball team.
But I'm also asking you that question.
Correct. And they also operate under that Olympic 40 rule. The Olympics reserve and make sure that there's no competitor marketing their products over Nike during these games. There are rules set in place for that. So there are major power plays being made here.
Is because you were once with Nike, correct?
No.
You were never with Nike.
No, Adidas.
Okay, you were with Adidas. All right. And people thought you should go with Nike, and that was not something that ended up working out. What happened with that?
No need to get into I don't have a problem with the industry. I do. I'm lying. I do.
Okay, I was going to say, go ahead, Jaylen.
I do.
All right, go ahead.
I think the industry definitely needs some new energy, some new creativity, and some new options. I think the way, the shoe companies go about issuing deals and illustrating people's value in terms of IP, in terms of creative control, in terms of like how involved you are in the process, I think it needs to change. I listen to the voices of our older generation. I know players that I can name, superstars, that would tell you right now, man, they frustrated as hell. They stuff can't come out when they want it to come out. They have no input or control. They was forced to renegotiate certain percentages that they think they should have more value. And they wish it was other options. So, people like to use the word disruptor for me, and I really don't like it.
You don't like the word disruptive? For yourself?
It comes with the territory.
Okay.
But no, because everything that I've tried to be a part of, everything that I am a part of, my thought process has always been solution-based. Listening, being a representing our 450, listening to what players are saying behind closed doors.
But some people would say solutions can be disruptive from time to time, depending on who you're dealing with.
Yes, no, you're correct. I just don't like to be called just like singularly
Got it.
a disruptor.
Disruption sometimes breeds innovation. And for Nike, they're definitely going through a phase right now, switching CEOs. As you can see, they changed their whole supply chain, and that has hindered their customers' access to their products. And with so many new brands coming into the marketplace, they've actually gained market share on Nike. Nike, man, they've really been going through it the past year and a half. We just seen Caitlin Clark play a whole season having so much visibility and so much interest, but yet she doesn't even have her own shoe line. So what exactly is going on over there at Nike? Because there's not too many athletes in all sports that are bigger than Caitlin Clark right now. It just doesn't have that type of hype. But again, she spent a whole year in the WNBA without her own shoe. Says a lot about Nike right now.
But my thought process has always been solution-based, trying to create a solution for what I feel like in society, from an athlete perspective, is viewed as a problem. And that doesn't just stop at the shoe industry. The agency model, we can go more in detail. Yeah. Actually, I could talk to you all day about this stuff. We have a lot of meetings with the union, which I'm happy to be involved with. I've been since I was 21 years old. So I've been 7 years now that I've been participating in the
Yeah, you
development.
turned 28 in a couple of days.
Yeah, man, this is my this is my last 2 years in my 20s.
Right, that's right.
That sounds terrible.
It ain't terrible.
Nah,
Ain't
I know,
terrible.
but I've been a part of it for 7 years, and I've learned, you know, the ins and outs of the operational aspect of the league, the marketing approach. I learned about, you know, how the decision-making process goes, who has responsibilities, who doesn't, and how, you know, things are looked at and viewed. So, you know, I think things need to change.
I'm going to read a quote that you gave. But
Yes,
before
sir.
I read the quote that you gave, you were responding to Nike founder Phil Knight. This is in 2022, who had criticized Kyrie Irving for his quote-unquote slow-motion non-apology after sharing an anti-Semitic documentary on social media. That's for Kyrie to discuss. We don't have to revisit that at all because there's a lot of hits that he took during COVID, from myself included, that he did not deserve. So I want to make sure I'm on the record stating that, and he and I'll have a conversation at some point. But I remember when you were communicating about Nike in response to their reaction to Kyrie, and your exact words was, "Since when does Nike care about ethics?"
That is facts. They use cheap labor and even child labor in some cases, quote unquote, allegedly. But we all know they've been using questionable labor, I should say. And it's really boosted their profitability on their products. It's not like they discount the price for the US customers to buy. They actually mark it up almost times 10. So yeah, they're not really necessarily the ones to be acting like the moral police out here.
Now, you've never been under Nike. Like you said, you were under Adidas. Things didn't work out, but you didn't hesitate to say what you said about them.
For sure.
A, why? And B, do you not see how that can alienate a lot of businesses from wanting to do business?
Absolutely.
With you and your willingness to speak out.
I think the ones who haven't been behaving ethically, for sure. I think the ones who do, I think it actually would attract them. But as a major corporation who's huge, has a lot of under their umbrella, that always hasn't maintained the ethical approach to, you know, the decision making that they have, especially on the behalf of their signees. So being able to see that, because like a lot of the things you stand for are public, a lot of the things you represent are public, and the messaging that you put out is public. You know, it don't take nothing but a bit of time to see what the company represents. And I think that is the part where I challenge them to do better.
And Nike mainly represents their shareholders. All their moves say so. And Jaylen right here is exposing a little back end thing that never gets talked about with the previous athletes that were signed. Guys like Penny Hardaway and the foam posits. That's a very popular shoe. Scottie Pippen has a popular shoe in Nike. A lot of the older players, they had shoes that sold millions, if not billions by now. And I'm wondering, what are the royalty rates of that? We always hear about the upfront money, but really, what's $20 million a year, which is good money, off a shoe that has your name on it that's making $2 billion a year, or even 10. So we sometimes know it's not necessarily about the money, but it's about the contract terms. Michael Jordan built that whole company down there at Nike, and he only has a subset. He should be almost as wealthy as Phil Knight. Might as well be a founding father of Nike.